Hi everyone, this is our graphing video on the spec data. We have two different kinds of graphs. The first one that I'm going to do is going to be real quick. So this is going to be similar to the graphing assignment. So I'm just going to do it really quick and show you guys how to format it, find the buttons if you need to. I am on a PC right now, so just be aware of that. You might not find the buttons as readily as I do in case you're at a Mac or something like that. And another kind of important part here, if you are using the browser option of the Microsoft Excel, like through your canvas and stuff, some of these buttons are not going to show up at all. We found that out today in class. So I would suggest you go to the Cal State Fullerton IT website, install the Office from there, and then actually download it as a program in your computer, because sometimes it's just going to reopen Excel again on your OneDrive. Actually download it. So if you need help with that, just ask your TA. They can help you, or that you can go to the IT department. They can help you as well. So here we go. So this is the first part of the lab where you had increments of 25 on your wavelength on the spectrometer. And please, please, please do not look at my data. They are made up numbers, so don't even compare yours to mine. I'm just showing you where the buttons are, right? My data is not at all accurate, so don't even, put too much into it. So I have all my data here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight it just like usual. So I'm going to highlight only the data that I am going to graph. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click insert, and then the instructions tell me to find a scatter plot. So it's going to be this one right here, right? You drop it down, it's going to give you different types. We want the one without the line. So my particular data, right, looks like that. Again, don't compare yours to mine. Mine is made up. So we have to make sure that we have everything we need in terms of the titles and stuff like that. So I would be okay, and this is just for my class, but I would be okay if you just put wavelength. Oh, can't spell. Wavelength in nanometers versus absorbance, right? Make sure at the very least that you have both variables on there. If this is a formal lab report, then you're gonna need to give me a statement. So we have to add our axes on here. For my computer, I have this handy dandy little pop-up over here. Most computers, including the Mac, you're gonna have to go up here on the upper left hand side. It says add chart element. So I'm just gonna use this button since most people need to use this one. I'm gonna click on it, and then I have axes titles, and I need both. So I'm gonna click primary horizontal and then primary vertical, right? And again, we've done this in the last video, so if I'm going too fast, you've seen this before. So I'm gonna change my axis title. This would be your wavelength in nanometers, and then your y-axis would be your absorbance. And absorbance does not have units, so you just keep it as absorbance. Now, if you take a look at our graph, just the way that it looks, you'll see that most of our data points are over here, right? We don't even really need to use this spot. So sometimes if that happens, you can actually shift your data over so that you're only looking at what's really important. So to do that, is you're going to click your x-axis, if it lets me. There we go. You're going to click the numbers of your x-axis, double click, right? If this menu screen doesn't show up already, then hopefully it did once you double clicked it. You're going to the one that looks like a bar graph, right? So you're going to click on that, and then you're going to click axis options. And so we can adjust the bounds, right? Your minimum and the maximum with this one right here. So our number actually started, or actually our data collection started at 350. I press enter, see how that shifted over. And then the maximum that we have was 700. So I added that, press enter, and then it shifted it over. So now we're looking just at the important parts of our graph, right? There was no spaces that we don't need. So we're almost done. We're going to add our trend lines and R square values. So same thing, you can go up here, add chart element. if it lets me. What is up with my computer? One sec. Okay, there we go. Add chart element, and then there should be something that says trend line, right? We're gonna go to more trend line options. It's gonna put your trend line on there. And then over here, if you click all the way down, you're gonna display your R square value and your equation, right? So there it is. And I'm just gonna scoot it over so everybody can see it. But that's how you do that first one. Right? The second one is going to be similar, except we have to do a couple of extra things. So, if you need to go back, pause, and work on that graph, but that should be what it is, right? With all the axis labels, the equation, the R square value, and the title. So, the second part of the graph is the one where you did a 1 to 3 dilution, right? 1 to 3, 1 to 9, and 1 to 27. If you look at your modules, it's going to tell you to put your dilution ratio just as 3, 9, and 27. Because if I try to do 1 to 3, I'm going to show you right now. If I try to do 1 to 3 and I click enter, it's going to make it so that it looks like time. But that's not what we need. We need it as an actual value so that our graphing is not super funky. So just put 3, 9, and 27. And just so you are aware, I know some people in my class did their data table like this, where it's downwards. That's totally okay. Just be aware that you're just going to select the correct one, hopefully, right? 9, 27. So if your data table looks like this, again, totally okay, right? Sorry, my laptop is just slow today. This one's okay as well. So I'm going to do it for both just in case you did it, but the graph should look about the same. Oops, sorry. Let's see. So that was 35, 47, 13. I'm missing a number. Oh, sorry. 35, 47, 47, 32, and 33. And then the last one will be 12, 13, 15, and 20. So either one works. Right, I'll show you both just in case. But first thing we need to do is we need to find the average. This was in the last video, right? So I'm just going to put a column. Sorry. I'm just going to put a column that says average right next to it over here. Right? And all you need to do is you need to click equals and then type out the word average, put an open parentheses, and only select the data that you want the average of. Right? Don't click the 3 one because then it's going to try to calculate that and then your number is going to be totally different. Right? So just what you need. And then close parentheses and then enter gives you a number. Right? And some of you guys know this technique already. If not, then click back to your average. See how my cursor at the moment is a white cross. If I hover it over this tiny box, it turns into a skinny black cross, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag it so that it takes the average of the other ones as well without me having to type it out every time. If I do the same thing over here, click average, same thing, equals, type out the word average, open parentheses, and I'm taking the average of these numbers. I think I went too far actually. So these numbers, all the way to that. Okay, perfect. Close parentheses, click enter. I get the same one, 131. Then I go back over here, turn my cursor to a skinny black cross and drag over, and then I have the rest of my averages. Right? Next thing we have to do is standard deviation. If you don't know what standard deviation is, I would suggest to go back to your module and take a look at what that means. Right? Standard deviation, and then I'm going to do it on over here as well. Just a little tidbit for you guys because I noticed that some people were doing this. If you notice this particular cell, so each of these boxes are called cells. Each of these cells, sometimes they overlap and sometimes they cut off. So like this one right here should say dilution ratio, but it's cut off, right? So it's not actually cut off. It's just, it's in there, but it's trying to fit it within that cell. This one, on the other hand, is spilling over, right? If I click on this box, look how it says standard deviation over here. If I click next to it, it's actually blank, right? Because I was seeing people that they were, like writing all their numbers next to it like this, right? And then they try to graph it and it's funky. So you actually need it right next to it. So even if it spills over, even if it cuts off, you need it right next to it. So a quick fix for you, if you put your cursor right in between two columns and you double click it, I'm going to double click it right now, it's going to fit it to the longest word, right? So now you can see this is wider than this one. If that helps you, great. If it doesn't matter to you, then doesn't matter. So I can do it on here too as well, right? So just a little bit of a thought there, because I saw people were putting it in a weird way and it's messing up their graph. So standard deviation, again, if you don't know the purpose of it, look it up. To do the equation, you're going to do equals STDEV, open parentheses, and then just the data, right? Don't include the average. It's just going to be the data. I click close parentheses, gives me a number, right? Same thing. I'm going to drag it down. It's going to do the same calculations for the others. If I do it over here, same thing, STDEV, open parentheses. I just need this, not the average, just the data for me and my group, close parentheses, same number, right? And then I'm going to drag it over. And there you go. Right now, be aware that if you are doing calculations, you do need to do it in SigFigs. For this particular example, I'm not going to worry about SigFigs, but just be aware you do need to do that. So now let me show you guys how to graph it, right? So to graph this, you are going to need these data tables in your assignment. To graph it, you only need to graph dilution ratio, right? And your average. That's it. Because all of this in between is called raw data, right? I mean, all of this on these tables are called raw data, but these in particular are raw data, right? So we just want to graph dilution ratio and average. You have two ways you can do this, right? I prefer the second way, but I'm just going to show you the first way anyway, just in case you are comfortable with that. But it only works if you have just a little bit of data tables, right? Or data points, I mean. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, right? I'm just doing Control C. You can copy it by right clicking as well. And then I'm going to, actually, I'll do the pressing one so you can see. I'm going to do, if it wants to, paste, right? So now I moved it down here. Now, the finicky thing about the Excel is that it's very particular. So if I just straight up did copy and I just straight up pasted it down here, see what it did? It put this weird little ref there. So what it's telling you is that, oh, like there's no equation over here because these are programmed to take the averages of the ones before it. But this one is not. It's using the same equation, but that's really not what we need. So I'm going to erase it. So when I do anything that I inputted a formula in, I will highlight, right click, copy, and then when I paste it, I actually want to do paste special. So this one right here, right? Paste special. And then it's going to give you a couple of choices, right? On the Mac, I think yours are actual words. On my PC, it gives me pictures. So I just want paste values, just this one, right? That just means it copies the numbers and not the formula, right? So I only really do need the numbers. So from here, I can now, if my computer lets me, graph the two things, dilution ratio and average. So, oops, sorry. I don't know what is going on. Whoops. Okay. So there we go. So now I'm going to take these guys and I'm going to graph it. So same thing, insert, and it does also want a scatter plot. So same thing, looks like that, right? So you have 3 points. Again, don't worry about the way my data looks. Just make sure that yours looks fine, right? That's what we're looking for. So I'm not going to fix the title and the axes. I'm going to leave that up to you. I'm going to show you guys how to do standard deviation. That's kind of the important part on here. You fix the other parts yourself. So to do standard deviation, you're going to go up here, add chart element, right? and then you're gonna look for one that says error bars, right? Error bars like this. And then we're gonna click the one that says more error bar options, right? The reason why we're gonna do more error bar options is because, sorry, let me do that again. Let me do that again. Add try element, error bars, more error bar options, right? So more error bar options. The reason why we're going to do that and we're not going to just straight up click standard deviation is if I click standard deviation, it's going to give me this, which is not necessarily wrong and not necessarily right. So our job as scientists is to make sure that we are inputting our own data, because Excel is doing the default settings that it has, which is not always the right one, right? So at this moment, we have these error bars here. They are X and Y error bars. On your modules, if you read it, which I hope you did, it only asks for the Y axis error bars, which is the vertical ones, right? So these horizontal ones we don't need. So I'm just going to click on them and then press delete, and then they go bye-bye, right? So we're worried about these ones here. So I'm going to click on this, go over here to my bar graph, and then see how it says standard deviation and then it says 1.0, right? That is not what we calculated. If you take a look at my standard deviation, that is not 1.0. And that's what I mean when I say it as the default. You don't really want it to do the default. So I'm going to click custom, and then I'm going to specify value. So I'm going to put in my own calculations. So then this little box thing shows up. We're going to delete what's there and highlight our own. So this is mine right here, right? And then I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to delete this, highlight my own, and then click OK. Right? So now those are the error bars. If you take a look at it, this one's real tall. This one is still visible, tiny, but this one is tiny and barely visible, right? So again, the error bars show you guys how far you are from the average. So what this means is in this data point, right, it is a very long and big data point. That means that there was a lot of variation between me and my group mates, right? This one, some variation, not too crazy. And then this one, very little variation, which is good, right? Because in the perfect world, if me and my group mates are trying to do this experiment, we should have the same values every time, right? However, this is not a perfect world. So there are errors that could happen. Either the machine is not calibrated, I don't know, you didn't wipe your spec with a kim wipe, you diluted wrong, all that good stuff, right? So then if I just take a look at this, it is now my job as a scientist to look at this data and say, oof, like this is a very big variation, what happened here? So then I'm going to look at my data and notice that Goofy, right, has twice as much values than we do. So as a scientist, I should then talk to my group mate and say, hey Goofy, what is up with that number, right? Why is it so high? And then that should signal him to say, okay, let me redo it, right? Or if you are the manager or whatever, just say you might want to redo that, right? Because there is so much variation. But hey, it's Goofy, he does it all the time, right? And then that should be it. Again, you need to fix your title, you need to fix your axes labels, you do need the equation of the line and the r square valued as well, which I already showed you how to do, right? So please let me know if you have any questions on this exercise. Please read the rubric before you turn it in. Make sure you have everything on there. And then it's going to want you to calculate your y square value. So once you have the equation for this second one, right? Once you get your equation, you're going to get a y equals mx plus b equation. The absorbance of the unknown that we calculated from last lab, right? Make sure you plug that in. So again, you're going to get a y equals mx plus b equation, right? The absorbance, the unknown absorbance that you got from last week, you're plugging it in for y. I guess I should have moved it in a little bit. Let me move it. So this is for your calculations, right? So unknown absorbance, plug in for y, right? And then solve for x, right? I need to see the calculation. So if you're comfortable typing it out, then type it out. If you're not comfortable typing it out, then go ahead and write it out, take a picture, and then send it that way, right? So please let me know if you have any questions on that, and I'll see you guys next time.